Right, should we kick off then? So thanks everyone for coming along to this second external webinar that Bromford are running. My name's Mark Willis. I work in the strategy team here at Bromford. To kick off, obviously this is all to do with the kind of place in practice. How are we establishing place-based working? But to go back to the beginning, just to set the context really quickly, Paul, can you talk about our neighbourhood coach role and how that kind of is shaping into place-based working?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mark, and morning, everybody. So first of all, we have an approach of neighbourhood coaching for nearly almost 10 years now, essentially. And the principle of the coaching model was to move away from a kind of top-down form of housing management, which is sometimes quite paternal in terms of its relation, and to move to a relationship with people who live in communities that's more adult to adult and more a relationship of equals. And that involved, first of all, developing a coaching culture, first of all, and then radically changing the patch sizes that we have. So in housing, typically, you'll have a kind of housing officer type role of about 1 to 700 homes, 700, 800. And as you can see from the graphic here, we took that down to an average of 222 to make sure that people had got the time to do that coaching. It was always our intention to develop that further and to move into more relational ways of working. But we brought 3 organisations together, a big task force, and that's led up to the formation of this strategy. What I think the connection is really is that customers absolutely tell us that by knowing their coach, they're significantly more connected to the community. That's not just through the coach, it's through connections, meeting each other, and then performing a much more resilient and a much more connected community. And that's why we think that part's important. What we didn't do was to take the rest of the organisation with us. So that was reserved to the coaches. Place-based working is the next step of that, really, which is to take the whole organisation working in a place-based way.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Paul. So I think in terms of kind of moving to that more relational based way of working for the rest of the organisation, it's kind of a reaction to what our customers have been telling us about what works and what doesn't work. So Leo, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So our customers in Staple Hill were very open about how they felt about Bromford. They were very positive in their interactions, with our neighbourhood coaches and with our service delivery colleagues or our engineers who go in and fix things like bathrooms and taps and cupboards. However, they felt that two-way communication between themselves as a customer and Bromford as an organisation could be much improved. They found that there were issues in those communications which then led to delays in things getting resolved for them or problems getting picked up and fixed. Customers also felt that their personal needs and circumstances weren't taken into account when dealing with us necessarily. So for instance, for things like repairs or for customer review visits, they found that visits were sometimes scheduled at times which made it difficult because they had work or childcare commitments, and then combined with sort of the lack of communication where we had to have customers reporting that they had to take several days off work or time off work, to try and work their diaries around, when we could see them. And customers also felt that Bromford could have more influence in the local community. We have a lot of customers who live in the Staple Hill area, and customers, felt that they would really like it if Bromford could do more with police or local councils or the local services to solve some of the common challenges that affected those areas. So, we sort of got that feedback loud and clear from when we did our customer engagement.
Brilliant. Thanks, Leo. So based off that feedback, Paul, can you just really briefly explain how that's kind of shaped our attitudes to what we think place-based working is? I know we covered this in the last webinar, so if you want this in more detail, go back to our YouTube channel. But just very quickly, for those who weren't there, to catch us up, Paul.
I mean, really, it's the words there. It's bottom up. It's remembering that it's bottom up. It's resisting the kind of organisational temptation to lay out the plans from their perspective. And it's absolutely about, taking the time to listen to what's going on locally. And the first part of that was establishing the team to do that, so that we've got a locally based team in place who are receptive to what's being said locally and what's being demanded locally, and work forward from there. So that was very much the first step. Start bottom up, but most importantly, establish a team who are receptive to the local place.
So we've got what our customers were giving us in terms of feedback about what was and wasn't working, and we kind of deduced this plan to set up this bottom-up team to try and deliver that. So Leo, what were we trying to achieve from this pilot?
We really wanted our success measures to be quite broad rather than being very specific. So we came up with sort of the 5 top-level outcomes which are on the screen now. But what we really wanted to try and understand from running a pilot in Staple Hill was how would a team based in and around Staple Hill, made up of colleagues who had the skill sets to deliver a high level of service for these customers, how would they work if we improve the communication and the collaboration between them. Teams already work closely here at Bromford, but if we really sort of took that to the next level, would we see any service improvements there? And what we also wanted to see is, as with a lot of organisations, Bromford is split up into a number of sort of specialist teams, specialist areas, each with their own sort of targets and objectives and KPIs. And what we really wanted to see is if those teams had a more local set of objectives and targets focused around the place, will that encourage even more sort of cross-team collaboration? And will that improve the service levels both internally but also to our customers? And we really wanted to see if sort of repair and property improvement activity, if it was influenced from feedback from customers and colleagues who are working in that local area, would that change the priorities of the work that was scheduled out, both in the short term but also in the long term, rather than it being primarily governed from the central sort of decision-making hub? And finally, we really wanted to, there's only so much you can uncover in planning, and you do find out a lot more in doing. So we really wanted to be open, as we've done a lot of planning, we've done a lot of thinking around this concept, but we knew that we couldn't uncover everything, we couldn't plan for everything, and there would be some unknown unknowns. So we really wanted to sort of get something moving, get something working, so we can start uncovering those and understand if we're along the right track or if we need to pivot at all.
So moving very quickly from what we're trying to achieve to actually doing those in practice, Paul, can you talk to us about our 4 pilot areas where we're going to try this different way of working?
Yeah, so Staple Hill, we've had it up and running for nearly 3 months now. I'm going to hear from Suzanne and Richard, who work in Staple Hill, in a minute. South Lichfield goes live this Monday, and Morton in Marsh and a wider local authority approach in South Staffordshire will begin in the new year. And all those places are completely different. Our data modelling has chosen places that actually have got very, very different issues, very different attributes, different opportunities, different challenges. So roughly they represent the kind of the broad geography of Bromford and are reflective of our different customers and different communities.
And that kind of data modelling formed quite a significant part of our planning process, didn't it, Leo? Can you talk to us a little bit about that process and kind of where we are on that journey?
So Staple Hill, our first pilot, that went live in August. Obviously, we're 3 months in, which is obviously very exciting. So we've called it a pilot, but our intention is that there's no end point for this. This new operating model will continue into the future, but we wanted to have a point in time to sort of review and reflect based on customer feedback, colleague feedback, and sort of how we're delivering against the success metrics we mentioned earlier, and decide if we needed to, if any tweaks were required, or if we need to change any of our initial assumptions. And we're planning to have that activity in March. So it's not a stop point, it's more of a reflection point. Our next pilot is South Lichfield in Staffordshire, which is going live on Monday, which we're all very excited about. And we have 2 more pilots, one in the South Staffordshire local authority area, and the next in Morton in the Marsh in Gloucestershire, which are currently in planning. And we're scheduled to launch those in the first quarter of 2025, so between January and March. And obviously, when we've got a detailed sort of plan and delivery date for those, obviously we'll communicate that with everyone.
What everybody is here for, I suppose, is to hear about how it's actually going in our pilot that's already underway in Staple Hill in South Gloucestershire. So, Paul, this was also part of the planning process, wasn't it? Which is pulling the team together. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that process worked and how we got to kind of what we've got on the screen here?
We wanted to start this as simple as we could and not make a huge team. So we basically took all the people who are in the places already and work around the place and take them out of their organisational, individual kind of line management, let's be fair, silos, essentially, and put them under one place lead, Angela, who unfortunately can't be here today. We have not put any more resources on this. That was one of the things that colleagues have sometimes challenged us on in terms of, this is really good, but you're putting more people together. We absolutely not. Place-based working should be at least cost neutral and hopefully cost you a lot less because you're pulling resources together in a much more focused way. So we've got the team itself, the Staple Hill team that's on the left, and then on the right, what we're calling the enabling teams, who've all got lead name contacts with the place team. And that's because we recognise there was some internal confusion about who to go to. And we want to develop that relation between the place-based team and the enabling teams. And they work to, you can probably see across the top, almost a kind of an agile working methodology in terms of how they approach each week and their priorities. But the fundamental purpose, going back to what Leo said, was let's just get the people together and put them in a place and see how they work, see if they work differently and whether it generates better outcomes for colleagues and for customers.
Thanks, Paul. But we are thrilled to have two members of our place-based team on the call with us, Suzanne and Rich, who are part of this place team. What has been your thoughts on kind of how the team has been working together? Does it feel fundamentally different to how you worked before?
Feels very different and I absolutely love it. The first thing we did was sort out our workspaces. So the repairs operatives and empty homes operatives needed somewhere to store their materials. So we set up a garage for them. Our offices have improved by we have our own printers, so we don't go to the main office to have to print stuff.
And how about kind of your schedule, your day-to-day workings and kind of communications between other members of the team? Is that easier or more difficult or the same as it was before?
Definitely. So we got a Teams chat that we all look at through the day. And within that Teams chat, we've got a planner called Laura who plans all the operatives' jobs. So whereas before I'd have to phone customer services and I might be 56th or 20th in the queue, and then they'd have to go and speak to a planner to get when a job's going to happen. Now I just put a note in the Teams chat and Laura, the planner, organises whatever needs to be done. It's kind of instant and it is amazing.
That's brilliant. Have you got anything to add there, Rich? How about in your role as caretaker?
Yeah, well, because we know who's working here and what skill sets they've got, when something needs doing, we can contact them directly rather than go through customer services and through Angela, and things get done really quickly.
Yeah, like this week, there was a vulnerable customer who locked himself out and Rich gave me a call. We put it on the group Teams chat. We had, actually the repairs operatives were busy, so an empty homes operative helped him to get into his flat, changed his locks. Laura raised a retrospective job and it's all happy. And also the operative found there was something wrong with his front door. So that's booked in for the next day to be fixed. It's all instant. It's amazing.
I feel like that has definitely been one of the clear messages of the pilot, is the cutting down in the time it takes and the number of people involved in the process to get something from the initial raising of the issue to actually complete has really been narrowed quite drastically, hasn't it? Which I think is a really big win. I wondered if you two might be able to bring a little bit of colour to what is Staple Hill like as an area? What are the buildings like? What is the sense of community? Is there, particular community assets that are well used?
The buildings are old 1970s buildings. So there's a lot of cement. They're overdue cyclical works by a few years. They all need a deep clean. They all need decorating. There's really lovely customers. They look after their flat. They keep them beautiful. It's just the communal areas don't look great at the moment, and that includes the communal grounds as well. Although Place has helped with that a lot so far. So we do have the community hub at the bottom of Berkeley House. In the past, I've kind of felt like Bromford hasn't been so much two-way because we haven't had much to offer them. So we send customers or recommend customers who might want to have a lunch on a Monday or a Friday or go to the Little Sprouts Gardening Club. That's been one way, more or less. But now that Angela has got a budget, we're able to arrange more community things. Like we had a social skip day. Instead of clogging up the bin chute rooms and the waste rooms, we had a skip and everybody brought their rubbish down to one day. Also, I had an old chap in his 80s and he was given a hospital bed because he wasn't very well. So on that day, I took the lorry clearance guys up there and we got rid of his old original bed and his bed frame. So then he's got more room to get around his flat. So it's things like that. And then we've got a bulb planting day planned for the 30th of November. There's an independent gardener and she's done all the planters along the high street, trying to make the high street green. She's going to work with us. She also runs the Little Sprouts Gardening Club in the hub, and we're all going to work together and have a bulb planting day. And because Angela has a budget, it means we can pay for the bulbs. So we can bring something to the table. Whereas before, being in such a big company, that was really difficult.
Yeah, and I feel like that ability to, essentially be a lot more responsive and a lot more agile in being able to kind of support those kind of initiatives. Another really big win, isn't it? So I'm just going to move us on. So we kind of saw how the team was planned and put together. So these are the colleagues that are involved and they're kind of meeting regularly as a team. And as we've established that they have a clear line of communication between everybody in the team. And that's really kind of supported the way that we deliver services. We're just going to introduce a little clip here, which the star of the show is obviously on screen with us now. And this kind of talks a little bit of a summary about how it's been going in Staple Hill.
Bromford is committed to becoming a place-based organisation. Place-based working allows us to transform how we operate and focus on the needs and improving the quality of life of every community. But every community is different, and a top-down approach doesn't always work. So what does place-based working look like? Well, we don't really know yet. So that's why we've come to Bristol to run a pilot to find out.
We don't feel safe where we are.
It is classed as a priority neighbourhood.
I think the pilot is just trying to figure out the best way of working, what works, what doesn't work.
I think the future is looking so much better because of place-based working.
My heart is a wall with my thoughts.
Okay, so my name is Jade, and I've lived here for 5, nearly 6 years now. I live in the 2-bedroom flat with myself and my 5-year-old daughter. It's not been smooth sailing since we've moved in. We've been stuck in the lift a couple of times. I've had fights outside my door and broken glass and things like that. We don't feel safe where we are, but working with Cara, she's aware of this and she's trying to help us, and she is helping us, to be honest with you, which is great.
I don't know.
Cara is one of the neighbourhood coaches based in Staple Hill. And Cara receives, along with the other 3 neighbourhood coaches, a lot of positive feedback. The problem that we are trying to resolve is customers feeling that Bromford don't care, that they don't see us, that they're chasing us all the time, that we're not reacting, responding. So we have a team of 16 colleagues from across the business that are committed and passionate about the pilot. And we're dedicated, we're on site, we're embedded in that community. Colleagues can talk to each other. They have easy access to the planners, to the day-to-day engineers. We can all talk and we can move things quickly.
We're already seeing glimpses of what it could become. Take repairs. In the current process, an engineer could travel from many miles away to attend a job. But with place-based working, the same team are based in that place full time.
We'd have different repair guys each time, and we'd have to go through the whole thing. We'd have to say, hey, this is our autistic child. But now we're seeing a lot more of the same people, and they come in, they'll talk to my son, they'll be like, hi dude, how are you?
It makes me feel that I can report something and it'll be picked up quickly.
A few of them are recognising me and saying, oh, Andy, and good morning, Andy, that's nice. It just makes you feel good, you know?
Before place-based working came in, we were very much responding to lots of difficulties and problems, really. And now we've got much more of the community starting to flourish, really. It's really nice.
As a council, I do everything face-to-face if I can. We don't want to be seen distant. People seeing Bromford employees around the place, it makes them feel that, yeah, Bromford have taken interest in me and Bromford are concerned about them, yeah.
So we've been able to start a different style of working.
We had a customer who needed some additional support with visits to their home. We had a little bit of collaboration with the NC and our engineer to arrange a schedule for the customer that suited their needs, which would never have happened before.
Before, it had just come up on my notes that I got to go to this job and meet someone else. I wouldn't know whether it was just the NC for a neighbourhood coach, whereas now she can discuss the visit before we actually go there, and we go there well armed with everything we need to do at that property at the same time.
It's really exciting to be able to get those things sorted quickly for the customer.
I'm very hopeful that things will really, really develop and get much better than they have been.
I'm just very hopeful that things will change.
I think this is the way forward. I think a big improvement.
This is not just about fixing problems. It's about building relationships and becoming a part of the place. Bromford's goal is to not just work in the community, but to truly become a part of it.
Coming back to you, Suzanne and Rich, I wanted you to talk us through the social skip day that was organised, and can you potentially talk to us about how that was made possible through being a place-based team?
We worked with Kevin Johnson. Rich here spends 4 hours every day clearing our bin chute rooms where people just leave old mattresses and anything, black bags, because our bin chutes aren't fit for purpose. So we decided to have a social skip day so that people could bring their own rubbish down, and we had a skip. You can see the skip in the photographs. And it was quite busy, wasn't it? We all pulled together. That's the nice thing about Place. It's not just, oh, that's lorry clearance job, that's the caretaker's job. On that particular day, we all pulled together and we all did everything, didn't we?
Yeah, we even involved some of the local businesses, didn't we?
Yeah, and the local council came, and we were in the local newspaper as well.
Yeah. And it gave people a chance to get rid of their bulky items that they didn't want, and it's drastically reduced the amount of visits lorry clearance have needed to make recently as well.
Yeah, people, quite often the people in the flats on the lowest incomes, they don't run a car, they can't afford to pay for the council to pick up 3 items. And we had so many thank yous afterwards from customers who'd had a good clear out, made their flats tidier and cleaner. Yeah, it's really good.
As much as there's been some great successes, and we kind of explored those already, haven't we? There has been a couple of, I suppose, asks of the rest of the business where it's been a little bit tension because we're running 2 different kind of operating models. I wondered whether you two had any thoughts on maybe some of the issues that are still to be resolved in terms of your relationship with the rest of the business.
I've got one that has been resolved now. To start off with, the grounds maintenance team was short-staffed, so we weren't allocated any grounds maintenance people, and a lot of it hadn't been done, like the trees hadn't been pruned for a long time. There was just a lot to do. So I met a customer and he was looking for work, and he'd done that sort of work before. So I helped him with his CV and he applied for the job. He got an interview and he really enjoyed the whole process and the interview. Unfortunately, he didn't get the job, and Bromford are now helping him to look for other jobs. But other people came forward and got the jobs, and we've now been allocated 2 grounds people every other week, which will make such a massive difference.
Paul, have you got anything to add there?
It's still early days, and the main thing that we wanted to change, or what the team told me and Leo needed to change, was first of all get an understanding in the rest of the organisation that we're all customer facing. There's not a part of Bromford, or there shouldn't be a part of Bromford, where people don't communicate to customers. And that's still a work in progress, to be completely honest with you, because we kind of built up this complicated organisation where some teams have become too distant, and that's something we're working on very hard at the moment. The main principle to me, which is the one in the centre here, if we've got a problem in Staple Hill, we want you to come to Staple Hill and to help us solve that problem, not sit in an office somewhere completely remote. And we've definitely seen improvement in that. There's still work to go. Suzanne mentioned, small pots of money and having resources. Again, that's still a work in progress, but we knew that was going to be a barrier because, you've got Bromford is like 60 years old. It's had 60 years to develop the way it develops its budgets. Ultimately, what we'll probably need is place-based budgeting, but we're a long way from that at the moment. So there are tensions that play out and will play out. We've had some fantastic results so far, and you can hear the enthusiasm from colleagues, and we've got enthusiasm from customers as well, but still early days, to be honest with you.
Brilliant, thanks, Paul. So given that it's early days, Leo, how will we know whether this has been a success or not? We've heard some of the kind of anecdotal evidence of, improvements in the relationships of the teams, but can we measure that?
So yes, so when we were planning the pilot, we thought it was important to consider success metrics from a number of different perspectives. So the metrics we have on the screen there, they cover a number of different avenues. So we have some shorter term operational metrics, for instance, like repair completion time, number of complaints raised. But we also want to weave in some longer term measures, such as customer sentiment, which can take months or even years to positively change. We thought it was really, really important for us to measure if colleagues sort of within the team felt that they were more supported by the wider organisation, but also from their colleagues within the team. So before we launched the pilot, we ran a number of sessions both with colleagues and with customers to get their input on what they thought the measured success for the pilot should be. And those inputs sort of fed into these initial metrics on screen here. But 3 months in, results seem to be trending in the right direction. Fingers crossed, long may continue. The number of complaints raised has dropped. The number of customer day-to-day repairs raised without a scheduled date has also dropped. We've also seen a reduction in the number of what we call chase cases. So this is customers calling up to follow up to understand the status of a job or a repair. And that's sort of going down as well. But now, again, as Paul said, it's still early days. We only have a 3-month sample size. So over this next period, we're going to sort of relook at the sort of these success measures to make sure that these are still the right things to be measuring. Maybe we need to evolve them. Maybe we need to look at it slightly differently and tweak just to ensure that we're getting the right data inputs, to ensure that we're driving the right future priorities of the team.
Thanks, Leah. And I suppose just to set this initial pilot in context, so we've got Staple Hill down here, which is where we're running our first place-based pilot. But this is part of a wider shift where we'll be moving the whole organisation towards place-based working. And this is just a map of South Gloucestershire where essentially we think that we'll have 8 or 9 kind of different places and individual place-based teams to kind of realign the rest of the organisation to match that kind of neighbourhood coaching model of a really bottom-up relationship-based service. So with that, I will open it up to a Q&A. So we have had some great questions in the chat already, which I will now ask to our fantastic panel, but do get more of those in. So first question, I'd like to direct this initially to Suzanne and then open it up to any others about how we're working with kind of key community organisations. Are there any that we're already working with? So I'm kind of talking about maybe a difference in the relationship with the local authority or health or the police or
Angela, our manager, has met with the local authority, and just little things like who empties the dog waste bins, because at the moment Rich does that with the other cleaners, and it's reallocating that back to the council. The council are embracing everything we're doing. I'm just trying to think of other people that we're working with at the moment, because at Christmas we're going to work with the Hub and have some carol singers from one of the local churches. It's all the things that you dream of doing as a neighbourhood coach, but you don't have time because you're dealing with high priority domestic abuse cases or safeguarding cases or antisocial behaviour. It's all the nice bits that make a community better that as a neighbourhood coach I've wanted to do but not really had time for, and Angela has just been brilliant.
And we are, Mark, also, Angela and a number of other colleagues and myself are having conversations with South Gloucestershire Council in terms of a more strategic level too, because they're really interested in the rollout of that kind of place-based thinking across a wider local authority area. And I know there's a couple of South Gloucestershire colleagues on the chat today.
Maybe staying with you, Suzanne and Rich, because this is, to do with the way that you kind of foster those relationships with customers or their relationship with us as an organisation. Has the method of how customers get hold of Bromford for help with any kind of issues, has that changed? Or is there potentially a change in how empowered that you feel as an organisation to ask things of the rest of the business?
So they still phone the customer contact centre. They still, if they see us about, they'll speak to us. If one of them speaks to Rich and needs something, it's straight in the Teams chat and we're finding a solution. So pre-place, we had a customer whose bathroom door was broken and hanging off. She'd reported it to customer services, but nothing had happened. So I phoned customer services and tried to chase it up, but still nothing had happened. Then place happened. So I put in the Teams chat to Laura or to anybody who's listening, what's happening about this bathroom door? And Laura said, I'm really sorry, but no job was ever raised for it. And then our empty homes operative, Ian, just happened to be working an empty flat next door. And he put in the Teams chat, oh, I'm just next door. I'll pop round and have a look at it. So he popped round, he had a look at it, decided it needed a new door, and a new door was put in the next day. So a really unhappy customer turned into a really happy customer.
What Suzanne's describing is we wanted to keep it really loose to see what new models of communication do emerge. And that is happening now. And that will help us inform the wider kind of organisational design. And there's a question from Sam in the chat that's very much around that. And it's like, what we're finding now is emergent practice where things work better. You could be questioning why didn't those existing processes work in the first place? And that's a call that Leo and I've got to make on this in terms of, do you fix the existing process or do you create a new one? And that's part of what we're exploring here.
Right, thanks, Paul. There's a question from Rachel in the chat here I'm going to field. How big is Staple Hill? How many properties and customers are there? So there's about 800 homes, isn't there, Suzanne? Do you have a sense of how many people are within that kind of pilot area?
I don't know, actually. I know just in the flats where me and Rich work, there's 276 flats. One thing I will say about those flats is that when they do new build estates, there's a park or some sort of play area every other street. So at this say 276 flats, I think there must be about 170 children and there is absolutely nothing for them. So that's something that we're also working on with Place, and having Angela to talk to the right people within the business and out of the business. So that's giving us something else to work on.
1,300 odd customers.
Is it? Great. Thank you, Leah. And the second half of Rachel's question, which is how dispersed the stock is within the different pilot areas. And it varies a lot. That's part of the reason why we chose these different areas. So Staple Hill is an incredibly dense pilot area within quite an urban community. Whereas on the other end of the scale, we've got Morton in Marsh, which is in the Cotswolds, and quite a smallish village with little kind of hamlets dotted around with the old property. So they're very, very different across the piece. And we want to make sure that this way of working is suitable in different areas. And it might not look exactly the same, but the framework of it being bottom up, it not costing more, delivering better services for the people that live in those communities will remain. Paul, maybe if I can ask you this question from Carolyn, what about new developments and new communities? When do you anticipate introducing that kind of model?
Well, it would be very tempting because the early signs are really positive. And I said this to a team yesterday in that, and I've seen a question from a neighbourhood coach here saying, well, when are we getting this? It'd be very tempting to say, right, this is working, let's spread it. But we haven't evaluated it across the very different areas. So a new development, what we'll do, the timescale is exactly as Leo laid out. We will absolutely look at what would be the next thing we need to explore, be that a completely new development, be what more places. But I said yesterday, the temptation is to rush it, but because you've heard from the colleagues, the difference it's making to their lives. And we know it's making a difference to customers as well. But we've got to test it in different places. So slightly dodging the question mark, what I would say in terms of timescale, we'll be in a position, I think, around kind of, April, May next year to be able to think, right, how do we spread this? Where do we go next? But there's a lot of work to do yet, to be honest.
Thanks, Paul. One for you here, Leo. So we're making quite a lot of changes to the way that our colleagues, our human approach to what's going on. How about our technology? Is that flexible enough to keep up with these other changes that we're making?
What I'd like to say about our technology stack is it's a reflection of Bromford as an organisation. So how it's been created now and configured now reflects how we're currently organised. But if we do move to, when we move to a more place-orientated model, the technology will have to change with that, and it absolutely can. The bumpy bit will be that sort of middle bit in between where we're moving from one way of working to the next and, having sort of two operational models. So exactly how we handle that, obviously, we'll sort of find that out and how we sort of make it easy for colleagues to navigate around the systems, but it absolutely can be flexible and change as we move to our new place-based operating model.
Great, thanks, Leo. Question here from Marique in the chat. How do we empower colleagues to be more comfortable to be solution-focused rather than following processes? How do we make sure that the customer is at the heart of our decision-making? Maybe I can come to you on that, Suzanne and Rich. I'll open it up to both of you. How do you feel that the team, potentially anything that Angela's doing as team leader, to make you feel that you can really act in the customer's best interest?
So once we have a meeting with the whole team, the repairs operatives, empty homes, cleaners, caretakers, neighbourhood coaches, everybody, we all have a team meeting and we discuss any issues. So anything like that, we talk about, like, for example, we had an issue in one block in the school holidays and all the kids were chalking on the walkways. So we were getting lots of complaints because people were walking the chalk into their houses. So at the team meeting, we all decided, why don't we just give whoever wants a chalkboard on the wall outside their flat? So that's what Angela was able to do with the pot of money that she's got. And I had a lovely thank you from one of the customers yesterday. It's only 5 flats in a block of 48 flats, and they just got a chalkboard on the wall outside their front door, and their children can chalk away.
No, I think that's great, but there is a kind of follow-up related question from Vicky there, talking about the role as a neighbourhood coach. How do you feel that the new way of working has affected potentially your work-life balance, or has it affected the amount of time that you are used to spend doing more frustrating parts of the job, such as chasing repairs on behalf of customers?
So as a neighbourhood coach, if I wanted to find out about a repair or what happened to some follow-on work or something like that, I'd have to phone customer services myself. I could be 26 in the queue, 56 in the queue, and they'd then go and speak to a planner while I was on hold. Now I have direct access to a planner. It feels so good when I'm in a customer's flat and I say, I'm just going to find out what happened to that job. I put a question online, Laura's answering it straight away.
That relationship bringing you closer to the planner who kind of has access to all that information has been really powerful, hasn't it? From Sam, how have we worked to create a pointed word, a heat shield between the pilot team and the rest of the business? How have we kind of managed the tensions between how the business operates as a legacy business compared to this new way of working in the pilot?
It's a really good question. I'll go first, Leo. Yeah, so we absolutely recognise that. So, Sam, we know, and there still will be tensions between a place-based way of working and the rest of the organisation. At the moment, we're getting a lot of positivity around it, but it will get difficult. So to answer the question quickly, Angela is the first heat shield, okay? And her role fundamentally is actually to get that team working together and to almost protect them from the kind of the old ways of working as much as possible. Probably Leo and I are the second line of defence over that, essentially. And if Angela can't do it, we'll get involved. And we've put a governance around it so that if we can't resolve it, we've got an overall place steering group headed up by one of our chief officers where we'll just escalate it. That's the way we do it because we recognise there will be tensions, but we will iron them out as we go.
Nothing more to add to that.
We've got time for one more. A question from John. How quickly do our patch boundaries align to ONS boundaries, i.e. getting quite techie with the kind of breakdowns about how the ONS do that? So that is work in progress, really. So the way that we've done it is using some statistical analysis called clustering to bring us kind of the tightest groups of properties into one community, but also recognizing that there needs to be a kind of a minimum size for us to be able to, dedicate a particular number of colleagues. So it's as much an art as it is science. You can't particularly follow exactly what ONS boundaries are telling you about where communities define themselves, because essentially, coming back to one of the core principles, who defines who should be in a community is the people that live there and the people that work there. So it's a work in progress using some of that statistical analysis and then blending that with a more qualitative approach of receiving feedback from our neighbourhood coaches, our repairs colleagues, our caretakers who work in those areas. And that will be happening very soon. So I think that just about brings us to the end, and we have just slightly run over time as well. So I'll bring this to a close, but thank you so much again for coming along to our webinar. There will be more, we promise, in the future. We don't know when that will quite be, but we will reach out to promote that as and when. In the meantime, do go and listen to our podcast, go and follow our YouTube channel. Last thing is to thank my wonderful colleagues. You've been fantastic. Thank you so much for giving up your time. To Suzanne, to Rich, to Paul, to Leo. Thanks so much.